Hello, my name is Floyd and I'm 31. When Mary and I got married, I thought we'd thought of everything. I mean, no marriage is perfect, but we hit it off in all the right ways. She had this infectious energy, and I loved being her calm anchor. It started small, like a change in the wind that you only notice after a while. Mary became distant, not exactly cold, but different. She started hanging out more with Zara, her friend from the gym. Zara is the kind of girl who turns heads wherever she goes, effortlessly glamorous, always laughing, and always smelling of sweet perfume. At first, I was glad Mary had such a friend. Zara seemed like the type to make life interesting. But then Mary started changing in ways I didn't expect. She adopted Zara's habits, a fitness routine, and an obsession with her appearance that hadn't been there before. Sometimes I would wake up in the morning and she would be gone, at the gym with Zara, or taking some class. I noticed that her wardrobe had changed too. Tight leggings, or Nike Pro tops, new makeup, things she wouldn't have looked at twice before. She would dismiss it as a desire to freshen up her style. Okay, I thought, maybe it was just a phase. One evening, Mary came home beaming. She told me that Zara had offered her a job as a waitress in an upscale nightclub. I couldn't believe it. We didn't need the money. I had worked hard to give us a stable life. I told her it was a bad idea. It wasn't that I didn't trust her. I just didn't trust the environment. But she looked at me in a way, her eyes shining with determination, that made it hard to say no. She countered all arguments. It's safe, she said. Elite clientele. Top-notch security. Anthony, your friend, works there as a security guard. You know how strong and reliable he is. She was so flustered that I felt like an idiot for wanting to stop it. After much arguing, I gave in, mostly because Anthony was there. I thought at least she would be safe. But once she started work, things started to improve. I hardly saw her. Her hen nights with Zara became routine, and her shifts at the club kept her out until the early hours of the morning. When she was home, she wasn't there. She was glued to her phone or scrolling through social media, barely able to hold a conversation. I tried to engage her, to find out what was going on, but every time I brought up her work or her late nights, she accused me of being controlling. Why can't you just trust me? She snapped, throwing up her hands. You're making it into something it's not. The thing is, it wasn't just her words. It was her tone, exasperation, as if I were an obstacle in her way. This wasn't the Mary I married. And then there were the photos. I don't check Instagram very often, but one night, out of boredom, I opened it. There she was, Mary, smiling with Zara, drinks in hand, surrounded by men I didn't know. The photos weren't overtly inappropriate, but there was something about the way she was leaning toward these guys, the way their hands were on her back, that made me wondering if she'd remember dinner. When I asked her, she waved it off. It's just work, she said. I can't be a bore at a nightclub, can I? It's marketing, and it pays good tips. Marketing? Tips? I asked. In half of these pictures, it looks like you're on a date with these guys. Her face hardened. You know what? You're just jealous. You can't stand the way my job makes me feel good, not just because it pays. That really hurt me. I wasn't jealous. I was confused. I didn't recognize this version of her, and the more I tried to understand, the more distant she became. I ran into Anthony after work one night. He was at a club when I arrived to meet a client nearby. I hadn't planned to talk to him about Mary, but the words just spilled out. Is she okay? I asked. I mean, how is she doing at work? It feels like she's slipping away. Anthony hesitated. She's good at what she does, he said carefully. People like her. She has the kind of personality that attracts attention. Too much attention? I pressed. He gave me a look I couldn't understand. Floyd, this is a nightclub. Attention is part of the job. It wasn't much, but the way he said it made me cringe. Mary was supposed to be off work last weekend. I'd planned a quiet dinner, something simple to reconnect. But she came home late, smelling of perfume and alcohol. When I asked where she had been, she shrugged and said Zara had pulled her out at the last minute. I thought we could spend the night together, I said, keeping my voice level. Floyd side of this house? I didn't even know how to respond. It felt like I was losing her, piece by piece, and no matter what I did, I couldn't stop her from slipping through my fingers. I decided to take matters into my own hands and make decisions. I didn't have to think long before I called Anthony. We met for coffee in a quiet spot not far from his apartment. I laid it all out and he admitted that I was fed up. To his credit, Anthony didn't judge or try to downplay my concerns anymore. He just listened. "Look, Floyd," he said, leaning in. "I can keep an eye on her, no problem. But are you sure you want to go down this road?" I hesitated. Me? What if I found out something I couldn't shake? But the weight in my chest wouldn't go away until I knew the truth. "I need to know," I said firmly. "Can you help?" Anthony nodded. "I'll let you know if I see anything." It wasn't long before Anthony texted me, just a few nights later. "We need to talk. I have something you need to see." My heart sank as I read the message. We met again the next night, this time in his car, parked a few blocks from the club. He handed me his phone, the screen already opened to a grainy video clip. "This guy," Anthony began. "Mark. He's a regular at the club. Him and Mary, well, just watch." The video was unmistakable. It showed Mary and a man I didn't know, standing together in a dark corner of the club. At first, they were just talking, but then she leaned over, her hand lightly brushing between his legs. He didn't hesitate. His hand slid to her waist, and they moved even closer. My breath caught in my throat as the scene shifted to the alley behind the club. There, under the dim streetlights, they kissed passionately. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. It wasn't just a kiss, it was rough. I watched as she pulled away for a moment, laughing, before thrusting back into me. My hand shook as I handed the phone back to Anthony. "I'm sorry, man," he said, his voice low. "I didn't know it was that bad." I couldn't speak. The anger, the betrayal, it all hit me at once. But instead of exploding, I felt a strange sense of clarity. "I need time," I finally said. "Thanks for showing me this. I'll figure out what to do." I didn't confront Mary right away. I knew that if I lost my temper, she'd deny it or turn on me. No, I needed to bide my time, to play the role of the clueless husband while I considered my next move. And as I considered this, an idea began to form. If Mary could betray me so easily, perhaps I needed to remind her that two could play at this game. The answer, I realized, was Zara. If she had roped my wife into this job, she would be in charge without realizing it, I decided. Zara had always been a flirt, even when Mary and I were at our best. She had a habit of laughing too loudly at my jokes, or finding excuses to touch my arm. Back then, I had dismissed it as harmless. Now it seemed like an opportunity. If Mary thought she could get away with crossing boundaries, maybe it was time to cross some of my own. The first step was simple. Make yourself more available to Zara. I started showing up at her favorite spots, the coffee shop she liked, the gym classes she'd mentioned one day. The trick was to make it seem casual, as if I was as surprised by her appearance as she was by me. "Floyd," she exclaimed one morning when I bumped into her at the smoothie bar outside the gym. "What are you doing here?" "Just grabbing a post-run snack," I lied smoothly. "What about you?" "Same here," she said, flashing that bright, carefree smile. "You're getting into the fitness thing now, huh? Like Mary?" "Something like that," I said, laughing half-heartedly. I figured I could use a little stress relief. It didn't take long for Zara to warm up to me. She loved the attention, and I gave her just enough to keep her intrigued without being too obvious. I asked her about her day, complimented her on little things, a new hair color, her choice of sneakers. She ate it up. The first time I invited Zara, I said I needed help with a surprise for Mary. I was thinking of doing something special for her, I said. "You're her best friend. You know she'd love it." She showed up that night, looking as radiant as ever in a casual sundress. We worked on ideas for a while, but soon the conversation turned more personal. "Do you think she values you enough?" Zara asked suddenly, tilting her head. "I mean, you do so much for her." I shrugged. "I don't know. Sometimes it feels like we're on different wavelengths." She reached out, her hand brushing mine. "Well, if she can't see how lucky she is, that's her fault. Maybe mine, too, if it has to do with working at the club." It was a small moment, but it was enough to set the stage. Over the next few weeks, we grew closer. She would text me late at night, jokes or memes that always ended with, "You're the only one who gets me, Floyd." I played along, letting her think she was the one stalking me. But then I didn't expect things to change so much. The irony of it all was almost poetic. Mary, who had betrayed me, was now jealous of how much time I spent with Zara. "Why do you text her so much?" she asked one evening, standing at the sink, her tone sharper than usual. Her hair was still damp from her shower, and she looked tired. "She's your friend," I replied casually. "She's always around, and I thought it would be nice to get her opinion on something I mentioned." "What about?" Mary pressed, narrowing her eyes. I shrugged. "Just ideas on how to surprise you." Her mouth dropped open, but she said nothing. I could see the battle playing out in her mind, suspicion battling guilt. She knew she couldn't bring her feeling down and me feeling like a winner. That night, Mary left for another shift, and there was tension in the air as she kissed me goodbye. It wasn't like before, not gentle, not long, just a casual kiss, formal. The door slammed behind her, and I took a deep breath. Tonight was that night. I texted Zara, "Hey, I've got some wine and a silly comedy coming up. Come in?" She responded immediately, "I'll be there in half an hour." Zara appeared in a flash of perfume and effortless charm, dressed in casual ripped jeans and a loose sweater that still managed to cling in all the right places. She carried a bag of chips, as if we were teenagers preparing for a movie marathon. "Ready for a little laugh?" she asked, her smile infectious. "Always," I replied, gesturing for her to come in. The movie started out light and funny, but neither of us paid much attention. We sipped our wine, one glass at a time, until the humor of the movie faded into the background. What started out as idle chatter deepened as the alcohol loosened our tongues. "You've been different lately," Zara said, breaking the lull in the conversation. "More confident." I tipped my glass, watching the wine swirl. "Maybe I should have." She frowned. "Why?" I hesitated, the words heavy on my tongue. I hadn't planned on saying anything, but the combination of Zara's genuine concern and the pull of the alcohol was too much. Before I knew it, the truth was spilling out. "I know about Mary," I said quietly, not looking at her. "I know about the guy, Mark. I saw the footage." Zara's face fell, her eyes widening. "Oh no," she whispered. "Floyd, I raised my hand. "Don't." Tears welled up in her eyes as she leaned forward, clutching the edge of the couch. "I invited her to work there. I thought it would do her good. I had no idea she would. I can't believe it." She began to cry, her shoulders shaking with each sob. I put my glass down and moved closer, placing my hand on her shoulder. "Zara, stop," I said softly. "It's not your fault. What's done is done. There's no point in blaming yourself." "But I brought her into this world," she cried. "She was my friend, and no, Floyd, I'm so sorry." Then she looked up at me, her tear-stained face full of regret. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "I need to make this right." Before I could respond, she leaned in, her lips brushing mine. It was hesitant at first, cautious, but when I didn't pull away, she deepened the kiss. Her hands moved to my belt, fiddling with the buckle as if trying to make up for lost time. I hesitated for only a moment before giving in. There was nothing holding us back anymore. The boundaries that should have stopped us had already been shattered by Mary's betrayal. We stumbled into the bedroom, hands and mouths everywhere, and sank onto the bed. For the first time in months, I felt something close to freedom, an escape from the crushing weight of deceit that Mary had brought to our marriage. The sun had barely risen when the bedroom door burst open, waking us. Mary was standing in the doorway, her hair disheveled, her uniform still on. Her expression was a mixture of exhaustion and fury, her eyes darting between me and Zara, who was tangled in the sheets next to me. "Goodbye,"